Imagine being a part of a scientific experiment without your knowledge or consent. Shocking, isn't it? Yet, this is exactly what happened in many instances throughout history. You see, in the early days of scientific discovery, ethical considerations were often thrown to the wind. The pursuit of knowledge, it seemed, outweighed the rights of individuals, making this lack of ethics a widespread issue. Unsuspecting people from all walks of life were subjected to experiments that ranged from mildly invasive to downright horrifying. It wasn't until the widespread outrage and societal pressure that ethical guidelines and regulations were introduced. These rules were meant to protect individuals and ensure their consent, but, unfortunately, they didn't always serve as a foolproof barrier. Even with these guidelines in place, some disturbing practices slipped through the cracks, revealing a darker side to the pursuit of scientific knowledge. This brings us to some of the most unsettling human experiments ever conducted. Taking a step back in time, we encounter the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, a case that shocks us even today. Conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service from the 1930s to the 70s, this experiment involved 600 African-American men. Unbeknownst to them, they were part of a study to observe the progression of untreated syphilis. The participants were misled, told they were receiving free healthcare when in reality, they were denied the appropriate treatment for their condition. The repercussions of this deceit were devastating. Many participants suffered severe health issues, and the experiment had a lasting impact on their families too. The public outcry was immense when the truth was exposed in the early 70s. It led to significant changes in how ethical standards are upheld in scientific research. As disturbing as the Tuskegee experiment was, there are more chilling experiments to uncover. Moving forward to the mid-20th century, we encounter the monstrous experiments conducted by Unit 731 during World War II. Under the guise of research, this covert biological and chemical warfare research unit of the Imperial Japanese Army carried out some of the most chilling human experiments known to history. Unwilling participants, often prisoners of war, were subjected to unimaginable suffering in the name of science. The experiments ranged from deliberate infection with deadly diseases to exposure to extreme weather conditions. Consent was a foreign concept, and the subject's agony was seen as a necessary sacrifice for the advancement of wartime strategies. The sheer disregard for human life and dignity was staggering, making these experiments a horrifying testament to the darkest side of our curious nature. The horrors of Unit 731 set a new low in the history of human experimentation, but our journey into the darkness doesn't end here. Even in recent times, we have seen human experimentation that shocks and appalls us. Take, for instance, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Conducted in the early 70s, it was a study of the psychological effects of perceived power. Ordinary students were randomly assigned roles of prisoners and guards, and the results were horrifying. The guards became increasingly sadistic, while the prisoners showed signs of extreme stress and anxiety. Then there's the Milgram experiment, which examined obedience to authority. Participants were led to believe they were administering electric shocks to another person, and a shocking number of them continued to do so even when they thought it was causing serious harm. These experiments, while deeply disturbing, sparked a significant controversy that led to major changes in ethical guidelines for human experimentation. They underscored the importance of informed consent, debriefing, and protection from physical and psychological harm. These experiments serve as a stark reminder of the potential for harm when ethical boundaries are blurred or ignored. It's clear that the history of human experimentation is a dark one, filled with instances of cruelty and disregard for human rights. We've journeyed through time, from the early disturbing experiments to the mid-century horrors and recent unsettling instances. Each scene, each story, highlights a grim reality, the potential for science to lose its humanity in the pursuit of knowledge. These narratives underscore the dire need for ethical considerations in scientific research. It's not just about what we can do, but what we should do. Science should always serve as a tool for the betterment of humanity, not its detriment. The ongoing need for vigilance and regulation is imperative. We must continue to monitor and control scientific practices to prevent the reoccurrence of such unethical, disturbing experiments. Let these disturbing experiments serve as a reminder of the lengths we must go to in order to protect human rights and dignity in the name of science.